Have you ever looked at your bank balance and felt like you were actually looking at a ticking clock, watching the minutes of your life literally evaporate into thin air? Or that sharp, stinging feeling in your chest when the grocery bill hits a number that just doesn't make sense? It isn't just about the numbers, is it? It feels like a betrayal of the promise that if you worked hard and played by the rules, you'd be okay. I wonder if you've ever felt that the very ground beneath your feet, the value of your sweat and your time, is turning into a kind of mist. I want to tell you about a man named Elias. Elias is standing in a dusty line in Harare, Zimbabwe in the year 2008. He's clutching a heavy leather suitcase so tightly that his knuckles are turning a ghostly white. From a distance, he looks like a man who just inherited a kingdom's treasury. He looks like the luckiest man in the city. But if you could see his eyes, you'd see a psychological mystery. He looks like a man who is carrying his own death sentence in that bag. We'll find out what was in that suitcase and what it did to his fate in a little while, but have you ever thought about money not just as paper, but as a symbol of trust? For a long time, money represented something real, like gold or grain. But today, many scholars see it as something else entirely, a copy that has taken on a reality of its own, separate from anything material. It's like having a map that no longer points to any real place. When the map starts changing, but the land stays the same, we call that inflation. Maybe the easiest way to understand this is with a bowl of soup. Imagine you have a pot of rich, hearty beef stew. If you keep adding water to it every day, you'll still have a full pot of liquid. But is it really dinner anymore? Inflation is just a fancy way of saying your money is losing its purchasing power. It's the water being poured into your life's work. So why does this happen? Some economists say it's demand pull. Everyone wants stuff so badly, they just keep bidding up the prices. Others call it cost push, meaning it just gets too expensive to make the soup in the first place, because of things like energy or wages. But what if, at its core, inflation is really a kind of tax on the cash you hold? When a government creates more money to pay for things it can't afford through regular taxes, it essentially transfers the value from the money already in your pocket to the new money they just printed. It's a complex topic, but hopefully the soup analogy helps make it a little clearer. I would be curious to know your opinion on this. Does it feel like a social price is being paid for the rising cost of living? Researchers have found a bidirectional relationship between inflation and trust. When prices rise precipitously, it doesn't just threaten our economic security. It actually harms the social fabric by depleting social trust. It makes us believe that society can no longer solve its problems, creating a fear that the social contract is falling apart. When we lose trust in the currency, we often lose trust in each other. We become more guarded, more reticent, and less willing to put faith in the institutions of society. I wonder if this is the true human condition. Under inflation, a state where we are all waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Have you ever heard of the dogs in the harness experiment? In 1967, a psychologist named Martin Seligman found that if you give a subject repeated aversive stimuli beyond their control, they eventually stop trying to escape. They just lie down and whine. They call this learned helplessness. In humans, it shows up as a perceived absence of control over the outcome of a situation. I wonder if we see this in our own economies. When people feel that no matter how hard they work, the soup just keeps getting thinner, they can fall into a pessimistic explanatory style. They start to believe that their efforts will not affect the outcome. This can become culturally learned helplessness. Entire societies can become passive, fatalistic, and indifferent toward progress because they've been taught to believe that their efforts will yield no meaningful change. In some places, like Bolivia or Ethiopia, researchers have seen this firsthand where, even when rewards are offered for better performance, people don't reach for them because they've already learned that the game is rigged or the future is devoid of improvement. What does it do to a person's soul to believe that their fate is uncontrollable? Perhaps we could look at who actually wins during these times. There is an 18th century idea called the Cantillon effect. It's the simple truth that when new money is created, it doesn't hit everyone at once. The people closest to the king, the big banks, the large financial institutions get the new money first. They get to spend it while the prices are still low. By the time that money trickles down to common men and women, the prices have already jumped. In our current world, This often favors investors and owners over workers. Asset owners and homeowners might actually benefit from inflation because their debt becomes cheaper to pay back with inflated money. But if you are a saver or a low-income family, you are the primary victim. It's almost like a hidden redistribution of wealth that happens while we are all asleep. I am interested in whether you think people's beliefs about the economy are logical or psychological. Experts at Yale suggest that we evaluate uncertainty based not on facts, but on feelings. If we feel like the cost of living is aversive, we perceive the inflation as being much worse than the official data might say. Some folks respond by adopting a doomer mindset, staring into the abyss and deciding it's all hopeless. Others go the soft life route, trying to build fortresses of comfort and protecting their peace at all costs. Both of these are just masks of anxiety, different ways of trying to navigate overwhelming uncertainty in a poly-crisis world. Both represent a protective adaptation to an environment that feels like it is out of our control. Why do we continue to tie our lives to a simulacrum that can be manipulated by a sovereign? Thomas Hobbes once argued that we need a Leviathan, an all-powerful state to keep us from perpetual war. We give up our rights and our property to the state in exchange for order. But John Locke had a different idea. He believed government should be a fiduciary, a trustee whose only job is to preserve our property. If the government endeavors to take away and destroy the property of the people, Locke says they put themselves into a state of war with the people. I wonder if inflation is a slow-motion state of war. If the value of your work is taken from you without your consent through the printing press, is the social contract being honored? What can one person really do in the face of all this economic uncertainty? Some people will tell you to look for inflation-proof investments. They'll point you to I-bonds that adjust with rising prices, or real estate that holds value as rents go up. Others might suggest commodities like energy or precious metals. Then you have those who argue that Bitcoin is the only way to reestablish trust, claiming its universal digital protocol can't be manipulated by the words and deeds of men. But maybe the bigger question isn't just about where to put our money. Why are we always chasing happiness when what we're really doing is just avoiding discomfort? Why is it so hard to imagine a world where our value is untamed computation controlled by someone else? I wonder if finding an answer to those questions could help us build a life that's less prone to the shocks of the system. I think it's time we go back to Harare, to Elias and his leather suitcase. Remember how I said he looked like he was at a funeral? Elias had finally made it to the front of the line. He opened his suitcase. Inside were trillions and trillions of Zimbabwean dollars. Stack after stack of crisp, colorful bills with enough zeros to make your head spin. He pushed the entire suitcase across the counter to the merchant. The merchant didn't even look at the money. He didn't count it. He just grabbed a small, dented can of tinned beef and handed it to Elias. Elias took the can, tucked it under his arm, and left the suitcase on the floor. The leather bag was worth more than the trillions of dollars it contained. The zeros had outstripped the money, and the real value of his life's work had become negligible. Elias's fate wasn't decided by his work ethic or his kindness. It was decided by a static outlook of the economy that forgot that money is just a symbol of trust. When the trust died, the simulacrum collapsed.